Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today.
Hey everyone, it's Jessica from Hailey's team. Just wanted to let you know that today's podcast is an interview Hailey did on Scottie Taylor Jr.'s podcast, all about the business equation to double your sales. Enjoy.
All right, Hailey, I am so excited that you are here. Welcome to the Success Money Mindset podcast. I am so stoked to be having this conversation with you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and with all your listeners.
This is going to be so good. So, Hailey, for everybody listening, I know you and I were chit-chatting before we hit record, but I would love for you to share with everybody more about you. So just give us the rundown, like tell us all about you and what you do and how you help folks. And then we're going to dig in because I have some really interesting questions that I'm excited to ask you.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually had an interest in entrepreneurship and personal development at a pretty young age. I was an old soul. I grew up performing and I had to learn very quickly how to, take rejection, pitch yourself for things, all of that kind of stuff. And I wasn't sure what kind of business I wanted to have or what I wanted to do, but I ended up back in 2010 getting some coaching certifications. I started selling fitness DVDs and dabbling in all sorts of stuff. I really was just throwing different ideas at the wall. And eventually I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship. And then after that, I started to work for startups in business development and marketing. And a lot of them were very personal development based or service based companies. And I realized at that time, first of all, that no entrepreneur is fully ready. Like these startups I was working for, they were figuring it out as they went.
Yeah.
They did not have full confidence and certainty about their plans ahead. They were always like putting out fires and all the things. And so I learned pretty quickly a lot of things because you're just forced to in that environment. And then in 2017, one of the companies I worked for was facing a bunch of delays, had overhired, overthought their timeline. And so the entire team got let go in one day. And at that point, I had just signed a lease to stay living in the city that I had moved to for this job. I thought it was my dream job. I was kind of putting my own business on the back burner at the time because I was working so much. And I realized, well, if all along I've wanted to have my own company, there's no perfect time. I might as well just start. And I was young and I didn't have a lot of responsibilities or, kids that at the time and all of that. So I just was like, all right, I'm going to do this, and been having my own business ever since 2017. And I've been working with service providers on how do they attract clients, how do they grow their sales and their sales confidence, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
And just how do they create an awesome offer and message and all the things. So that's what I'm doing. I started a podcast because I was a podcast junkie called Health Coach Nation for coaches who want to grow their business. And it's been a fun journey, but that in a nutshell is kind of where it all went down.
Yeah, I love it. That's so interesting. I feel like the path that you kind of went on, I think every entrepreneur listening can relate to some degree, maybe not necessarily with the exact story of selling fitness DVDs, but I remember I used to sell those little Christmas cards to my neighbors when I was 12 years old. So I feel like all of us that are in these entrepreneurial type roles, we all kind of have something similar. So that is super fascinating. And I love hearing when, kind of the road turns, like your whole team got let go and you're like, shit, this just kind of happened all of a sudden, but it actually became a catalyst for what you're doing now. And as you mentioned, I'm so excited to talk about sales, closing, sales confidence. So I'm going to kind of dig right into that. And one of the things that you and I had chatted about that I would love to hear more about is the business equation to double your sales and confidence. So I'm going to kind of leave that open-ended for you to explain, because I'm like really interested to hear more about that. And then I'm sure I'll probably have some follow-up questions.
Definitely. So the core thing that I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is they overcomplicate everything, and they
Yeah.
overcomplicate things so much that they get paralyzed. And really, at the end of the day, the amount of sales you have is equal to the number of offers you make
Yep.
minus no's that you get, and that is your results, right? And I heard that from Brooke Castillo one time, and I was like, that is so true. We just overcomplicate every part of the puzzle, but really it all comes down to how many offers are you making and where are you getting no's. Now, within that framework, there's a couple things we have to talk about. So a lot of people think, well, okay, then I should just go out and make offers and just start cold pitching and start, just throwing all this stuff at the wall. And that is also not true. So in order to be able to make an offer, you have to earn the opportunity to do that
Yep.
by giving a really good, what I call like pre-offer, lead magnet, pre-offer. Like I
Yeah.
use all those words interchangeably, but how good is your free or intro level offer to get people in the door and nurture them to then get an opportunity to make a paid offer, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of our focus has to be on meeting new people, seeing what they want or need from us or what they would find useful, giving that pre-offer, that free thing once we know what's useful to them,
Yep.
and then making the invitation to the sale. And when we, look at the other half of the equation about the no's, we need to get really curious and interested about why we're getting no's. A lot of people just think, oh, they said it was too expensive, so I'm done. And then it's like, okay, bye. But we want to actually find out what would have been worth it to them to find the
Yeah.
money, or what about your offer itself isn't standing out. So really leaning in to the data and the no's and why you're getting no's and listening to your audience is key. And
Yeah.
then when we talk about sales confidence, with this equation, a lot of people think, ooh, making offers is convincing people for money, it's begging people, it's scammy, it's icky, I don't like sales, I dread sales. And when you think of it like that, of course you're never going to want to make an offer. But the way that you have to see it and the way that you lead into it is it's an invitation, and it should feel natural at that point because you've already built the relationship and the great pre-offer with the person to
Yep.
now they're like, I do want more. I do want to know more, right?
Yeah.
So I think a big thing is making sure that you shift your paradigm around sales to see it as it's a partnership to see if something is a good fit for someone, and not being attached to the yes or, needing someone to say yes to you to feel good. I think that it takes some of the pressure off. And I also think we have to relabel sales as like an invitation or curiosity or even coaching. Like you're really helping someone find a solution, even if it's not you. So
Yeah.
that's how I see sales.
That is so good. I've never heard that equation before, but I'm obsessed with it already. And one of the things that I think I would love to hear your take on for like any of us that are in entrepreneurial positions, right? Service-based providers, we get a lot of no's, right? The reality is we probably get more no's than we get yeses, I would say, for almost any profession, really, right? And I know specifically for advisors, I know for a lot of coaches, like you're gonna get more no's and you're gonna get yeses, at least typically, at least is what I've seen. And I'm curious, what thoughts, feedback, or advice would you have for somebody when you say, get really curious on the no's, right? Really like dig into the no's and understand why people are saying no. How can somebody go about doing that, both tactically and then like handling the emotional component of the no? Because I think sometimes people, when they get the no, it might be like a defensive mechanism to be like, oh, they said it was too expensive. Like, I didn't do a good job, and then they just kind of move on from it so that they don't
Yeah.
feel maybe the pain of the rejection. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
That is such a good question. So when it comes to asking for the no, we'll do that part first. Um, if you have, it depends on your business model, right? So if you do discovery calls or you take calls with your or meetings with your potential clients,
Yep.
then you have the opportunity to, if they're thinking about it or they say no, you just want to lean into, okay, aside, if they say it's finances, I would be curious about, aside from the finances, would this be something you want to do? Because we have to find that
Yeah.
out first. And
Yeah.
if they are like, yeah, I would totally do if it really wasn't for the money, I would be all in on this. Oh, okay. But usually what happens is like, oh yeah, but like I don't know if I'm gonna follow through, or like I need to actually ask my spouse, or I just don't know if the timing is right, or if this is gonna so then you get to kind of like the real cause that's
Yeah.
not the money. They're just kind of using the money as a escape mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So that's one option, is just asking that question. Or if they're like, oh, I need to think about it, I would be curious about, like, totally fine, you could think about it, but is there anything in particular that you're pondering or that could come up for you, or hesitations or concerns? Because we do want to find out their concerns. So
Yeah.
asking if they say no, like in an email or something like that, sometimes I like to just say, for feedback purposes, I'm always looking to improve. Was there anything in particular that was missing for you with this offer, or that
Yeah.
you went with instead that was appealing to you, or something like that? And then
Yeah.
if it's more of like you're doing digital sales where people just check out on a page or go through a funnel, it's a good idea to have like at the end of your funnel, maybe like a survey or just a short email that's literally only 2 questions. If you're going to do a survey, it cannot be long. It
Yeah.
has to be something like, hey, can you just tell me why did, what would have made this a heck yes for you? And maybe like why didn't you buy, and give them some options to check through or like check
Yeah.
off. So those are a couple options. But the other thing is, not everybody's going to tell you, or some people might ghost you, and that's okay too. But most of the time, I will say, like, there will be people who give you feedback. And I think one other thing about the emotional piece. So a lot of times, especially if you're really passionate about what you do, like we all are probably who listen to this podcast, um, you will have a hard time separating yourself from your entity or your offer or whatever service it is you provide.
Yeah.
But in order to get the data and see it like a scientist, we have to learn how to not make it mean anything about us, and
Mhm.
make it more about the offer itself wasn't right for the person. And why
Yeah.
is that, right? So it's easier said than done, but what helps me is really a couple things. One, in the beginning of my business, I had to have like a reset ritual to take rejection. Like
Yeah.
I would put myself in harm's way, in this opportunity to get rejected. And I was doing that all the time, and it can be emotionally exhausting. And so you need to be prepared for, okay, when it stings, here's what I do. Here's my
Yeah.
protocol. Maybe I go for a walk, or maybe I do a journal about, like, just, a couple questions that help me get more solutions oriented,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, but have something for yourself, because it is important. And you will find over time it will sting less and you'll recover quicker. Like
Yeah.
nowadays, I don't really take it personally. I'm back at it within, like, maybe there's 5 minutes where I'm like, oh, that stinks. But then I'm like on
Yeah.
to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is like your recovery time will get quicker. And then I think the other thing is just remember that, a lot of people try to avoid rejection by just rejecting themselves ahead of time, meaning they just hide, or they just don't put
Mhm.
themselves in those situations so they can protect themselves. But the truth is, that has much less upside, much less growth potential than
Yeah.
you putting yourself in rejection, getting rejected, but getting the data, getting closer to a yes, etc. So you just have to remind yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be the kind of person who's just protecting myself and staying safe and rejecting myself up front, or
Yeah.
get rejected by someone else, but at least I'm going out there and getting the data and improving?
Right. Yeah. That's really good. And I think for like the disconnecting, that they're rejecting maybe the offer and not you, I think is helpful. I kind of think about that from like a dating perspective also. Like if you want to date with somebody and they say like, oh, I don't want to see you anymore, how much do they really know about you? Like maybe 3%. They know what you look like, and they maybe know like you have a brother or a sister. They don't really know who you are. So they can't really reject you as a person because they don't know all 100% of you. And I like that reframe, that they're maybe just rejecting your offer and they're not actually saying no to like you as a person. And I think like that's a logical thing for us to maybe grapple with when we actually do get rejected, because we do all the time. But I also love this reset ritual. I'm going to definitely take some time and create my reset ritual, because yesterday I think I had like 5 sales calls, and at the end of the day I was like feeling a little burnt out. I was like, I'm a
I know how
little
that
like,
goes.
yeah, and like a couple of them were not the right fit. So I was like, this is just not the right fit, not the right time. A couple of them were great, and but it didn't close right away. And so I just needed like a moment to just reset and just kind of like recover emotionally from that. So I'm gonna definitely sit down and think through that. Okay, cool. And then can you elaborate on this whole idea of a partnership, right? To see if it's a good fit for somebody. So when you're going into a meeting with a person, with a client, with a customer, how do you like mentally prepare yourself so that you're not sorry, let me ask this question a little bit differently. A lot of times, I think us salespeople or entrepreneurs, we go in because we want to get the yes, right? So we're like going in and we're like, I want the person to say yes. And we're kind of like coming at it with that energy, especially if we're not where we want to be financially, right? We're like, a yes would be really awesome. But that's kind of a little bit in contrast with what you had said of it's a partnership to see if it's a good fit, right? And it might not be a good fit for them. And if it's not a good fit for them, I'm guessing that you're going to tell them this isn't a good fit. And like, you're not going to try to convince them. So how would you recommend going into conversations with that perspective or mindset? Are there tactics or things that we can do
Yeah,
beforehand to prepare?
definitely. A couple things. One, I think we have to look at what are your thoughts going into this sales opportunity. So like you said,
Mhm.
rather than having the thought, I have to close the sale or I want to get a yes, we need to actually lead with some kind of thought that gives us a feeling of curiosity, interest,
Mm.
and usefulness and wanting to help. So whatever that is for you, whether it's, I am excited to, learn about this person, or I am, gonna bring my best energy and control what I can control, but I'm not detached from the result, or whatever it is that produces a feeling of curiosity and like genuine interest to be useful is key. And then when you actually go into it, you want to focus on questions and you not doing all the talking. I think a lot of people think, oh, I got to go in and I got to prove myself and I got to have my script ready. And I think that
Yeah.
it can be useful. You definitely want to have a structure to the call so it doesn't turn into a pick my brain call. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that,
Yeah.
but I do think when you lead with that feeling of curiosity, naturally good questions will come to you. But for the most part, what you want to find out is, what is this person struggling with? What do they want? What have they tried in the past that has or hasn't worked?
Yeah.
What are they looking for? Like, what's their process for deciding? Like, what is their decision-making criteria if they have
Yeah.
anything? What's their timeline? What are any red flags or hesitations they have about getting support? And those things need to be found out, and you need to give the person to make them feel comfortable, like a roadmap. Like, so the way you start the call is really, really important as well. So
Yeah.
making sure you start it with, we have, X amount of time. I might ask you some questions about what you're looking for, what you've tried, etc., just to get a feel for a good fit. And then if it makes sense, we can talk about what it looks like to work together. And, I can help you, weave through your options and what you're trying to decide on. Does that work for you? Like, so just
Yeah.
giving a structure eases somebody on the phone and brings down
Mm.
their defense mechanism compared to
Yeah.
if you just like dive in without giving a cue or a heads up.
Yeah.
So good questions. I think the other thing you mentioned about like having that yes energy, I think one thing you really want to do is active listening and recap at the end before
Mm.
going into your pitch to make sure you guys are on the same page. And then I think the last thing is, if you do believe that your offer or service can help them, making sure that you're tying their pain points and goals and whatever to how it fits within your offer, rather than just giving a generic pitch of your
Mm.
offer like you do to everyone. it's actually really important to make sure that you're highlighting how specifically will your thing help their things they mention on the phone with you, or if we're
Yeah.
talking calls. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think it's
Yeah.
just important to make sure that you're just so like, actually, I'll give an analogy. I sing in a wedding band sometimes and I sub for them.
Yeah.
And I used to get so nervous about, what are they going to think of me? Am I going to do a good job? And I found that when I shifted to being really focused on, I am getting paid to be here to entertain and to be thinking about the crowd, not my,
Yeah.
and not how I look and not how I sound and not what I'm doing. I need to
Yeah.
actually be so focused on the crowd and them and their wants and needs. And I think that's the same energy you got to bring to your sales calls so that you don't get too attached to like, oh, I need this and I need them to validate me.
Yep. Yep. I love that. And that's a great analogy. And it totally makes sense, right? Because the people that are the best performers are thinking about putting on the best show. The people that are best salespeople are the people thinking about helping the person on the other end. So that's super, super good. And I love what you had mentioned. So active listening and recap before going into the pitch. And if you believe that your offer or service can help them, making sure that you're connecting like their pain point with the actual offer itself, and not just saying like, yeah, so great, all you told me all this stuff and here's what I have, and they're like, okay, thanks, but like did you even listen to what I said? um and so I'm curious, this is something that I think that perhaps folks struggle with, is maybe the part of the conversation to get the person to actually say yes or no, right? Like the actual close itself. So let's say like you're in a conversation with somebody, or a listener's in a conversation with somebody, and they're going through the close process, and they're like, they've learned about them, and they're like, cool, great conversation. Hey, I have this service that I can help you with. If you're a financial advisor, like I can help you with planning, all that stuff. What are some thoughts that you have around best practices to I guess, like, I don't know if it's close the person necessarily, but like get them to another conversation, or get them to a yes or a no? Because I think sometimes folks will shy away from that because they're maybe not sure what to say or how to say it. What are maybe some best practices or thoughts you have there?
Yeah. I think a couple things. You don't want to leave anything on the table. So in other words, you really, if someone's saying, "Oh, I need to think about it," or "Oh, I can't decide right now," we
Yep.
want in it just a caveat or pre tip for this. Your tone and your energy behind how you're asking the questions really matters in this, because
Yeah.
this is the difference between somebody who, is going to close the sale and someone who's going to be seen as a icky salesperson.
Yeah.
So where we want to go is our goal is to help someone come to a decision so that they're not left stuck thinking about it, searching for more options, like worse off than before they came to you, right?
Yeah.
So you can even say that, like you can even say, I hear that you want to think about it. I hear that you want to think about the investment. But my goal here as a service provider is to help you figure out like what it is that is bothering you, or what it is that you're still looking for that you haven't found yet, or what it is that will help you come to a decision rather than leave you in the land of like indecision and just feeling
Yeah.
stuck and no solutions, right? So we need to find out if it's because they don't trust you, they don't trust the offer itself, they don't trust themselves to follow through, or there's some circumstantial thing like time, or, you know, their summer with their kids coming up, or something like something circumstantially
Yeah.
that's causing them to not move forward. So in
Yeah.
order to do that, we have to ask like, okay, just so I understand and I can either help you, find other options or whatever, would you say it's, the investment aside from the money, would you do it? Would you say it's the offer itself doesn't match with you? There's something missing there. Do you think it's me? Like, is there something you want to know about my history and like working with clients? Like, and just kind of ask. And there will be people who just are really give you really dry answers, or
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
But I think having that dialogue and just giving that pre note that you are there to help them find a solution
Yeah.
is key. And then I also think you were right to say, if they need to think about it, that's totally fine, but do schedule a follow-up call. And usually the closer that follow-up call is to the first call, the better. Like, you don't want it to be, if it's going to be like 6 months away, just know that that person's probably not going to do anything, or it's
Yeah.
probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can plan it, but just know, like, it's really just count it as a no for right now.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. You can say, okay, so it's, it sounds like you're not, if you have the follow-up call and they're like, I'm still thinking about it, you can just say, I'm going to take it as a no for right now. That's totally fine. But like, what is still on your mind, and try to find that out. So
Yeah.
yes, schedule that follow-up call. Try to dig into which reason or which box is a reason why they're not making a decision.
Yep.
And I think the last thing too is making sure that you are highlighting what they said they wanted and not putting words into their mouth. So in other words, if someone
Yeah.
highlighted to you, like, I really want to solve this because I've been trying this for 3 years and blah, blah, blah. And then they tell you, well, I'm just going to keep trying things that I've been trying. And they've already told you, like, I've been trying this for 3 years and it hasn't been working.
Yeah.
So it is important to kind of be like, that's fine, but like, what's going to be different this time compared to the last 3 years of doing this?
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Highlight what they said and don't put words in their mouth. Yeah, I love that. So they don't trust me, they don't trust the offer, they don't trust themselves to follow through with it, or maybe there's some other external circumstance like time or kids or daycare or something else. Or I think money is also the other, like the investment is the other piece. So all that is so helpful, and I think this is going to be so beneficial for folks that are listening that really want to close more sales. And I think that, at least from my perspective, what's happened for me is when we kind of demystify the sales process, we get a lot more confidence because we're like, oh, okay, there are questions for me to ask versus just showing up to a conversation and then the person like picks your brain for 30 minutes and then you just walk away not even really having made an offer. And then you kind of feel a little weird about it because you're like, that wasn't really what my intention was, but I know they clearly identified or communicated what my intention was in the beginning of the conversation. So I love that. I guess I'm curious also the whole idea of like really understanding that, like, let's say you're on a sales call with a client or a potential client, and they will say something like they don't trust themselves, or I need to think about it, right? And so we on our side, we're like, okay, they don't really need to think about it, they just maybe need more information, or maybe that's just an excuse because they're not comfortable saying how they really feel. How This is maybe an interesting question. How deep do you go into like coaching, right? Because like we don't really necessarily know this person super well. We don't necessarily, I don't think, want to like showcase all of their limiting beliefs, like, right, where you're like, well, actually, you don't need to think about it. You just need more information. And they're like, okay, that's a little aggressive. Like,
Yeah.
so I guess how do you navigate that, or maybe think about that? I know it's like maybe a sort of vague question, but I'm just curious, like
Oh, that's
how
good.
deep you
Yeah.
get into, you're like, well, I can see you thinking this way and that's not serving you, but like how
Mhm.
deep do you point those things out?
Yes. So I think you should ask for permission. I think you should say, are you open
Mhm.
to a little coaching right now? Or are you
Yeah.
open to me sharing an observation? Or would you be okay if we do like a little bit of a thought experiment right now?
Yeah.
Like, so, or like a visualization or something. So I think you need to ask for permission, number one. Number
Yeah.
two, if someone's putting their guard up and really defensive, don't like, I actually think you should not coach them and fight over that. I think you should be like, it's just state the obvious. Like, it sounds like you might be feeling like, I don't know, like I'm being pushy or something. Like, I don't want that at all. Like,
Yeah.
highlight that. Like,
Yeah.
hello. You just state the obvious, because
Yeah.
then usually people are like, oh, no, 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 like, you're fine. Like, it's just something I'm thinking about myself or something
Yeah.
like that. So I think it's just a kind of stating your observations. And then I think the other thing is, you got to think about the person on the other line and their energy and their tone. And if they're on a whole different vibe and you're like trying to be like doing a personal development coaching moment, then that's not the way to do it. You want to match. If they're not open to that and that's not their style, then you have to be like a chameleon and kind of adapt to how they learn best, how they're taking in information, etc. So I think just making sure that you are asking for that permission. And then the other thing is how you say it. It's one thing to say like, I think you're really overthinking this, and like you language.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to go over well versus like maybe you reference like, sometimes when I'm in a situation where I have to make a decision, I notice myself blah 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 and like put it on you
Yeah.
and kind of like do it that way instead of being like you are, like no blaming, no like
Yeah.
yeah, that I think that doesn't go over well.
Yeah, I love the asking for permission, because it does, like, I even as you said that, you're like, ask for permission. Are you open to a little coaching right now? I felt myself like relax a little bit, because as the person who would be asking the questions, it's really nice to get permission from things, because I think if we just ask for, like, if we just say like, hey, it seems like you're really hesitant to move forward right now. Why is that? And they're like, okay, I never said, like, now you're kind of entering territory where it's very like you focused, and it can, I think it can sometimes come across as combative potentially, or convincing energy, versus when you ask for permission and the other person's like, yeah, and then they're like maybe open to it. Or if they're not open to it, they can say no. And then you can say, okay, cool, this is definitely not going anywhere. So let's just get off the call. Or yeah, the thing that I mention to folks sometimes is like energetically taking the energy back. So if someone's like, I don't think I really need any help right now, or if they're kind of being a little bit like resistant, what I typically say is like, agree with them. Be like, it sounds like you have everything covered. Like, because they obviously got on the call with you for a reason. And so I like kind of like leaning into sometimes their resistance, and they're like, if they like, they seem like they know it all, like, hey, it actually seems like you got everything covered. Like, I don't really know if you need my help. And then usually they're like, well, I am,
exactly.
I'm really thinking it. And you're like, okay, great. Like, it's just kind of like cracking that nut sometimes. Okay, amazing. This is so good. So, any other sales confidence or closing advice that you'd recommend? Anything that we kind of talked about that maybe other tidbits or tricks or ideas that you would have for folks?
Well, the last thing I would say is at the root of all of this, you have to be really confident in your offer
Yeah.
and your ability to help and your
Yeah.
ability to be resourceful. If you're newer, a lot of people, when they're new, they don't have that confidence yet because they haven't led a bunch of clients through their system yet.
Yeah.
So what you do need to rely on then is your resourcefulness to bring everything you possibly can to these first clients or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that at the end of the day, the person who's the most convicted will make the sale more than even the person who has the best sales tips and tactics and sales structure. So believe in your offer. And if you don't right now, ask why. What do I need to do to improve it? What do I need to do to maybe get some test people through it? Because that at the end of the day is going to serve you so much more in your sales and back up your confidence easily compared to just, oh, I just need that next sales tactic to like crush this call.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add to that, believe in your offer for the right people. Because I know even sometimes like we can believe in our offer, but if we're talking to the wrong person for our offer, then we might believe in our offer, but we don't necessarily believe it can help this person. And then there's that convincing energy. And I think it's even like, because I just think about target market or your ideal person that you want to work with, right? Maybe an older version of yourself, then that's like, I think really, really, really good, because I agree with you. And especially for like newer advisors, newer entrepreneurs, newer business owners, they might not have as much confidence because they haven't had those wins and those experiences yet. But I think I'm recognizing that some of the things I did early on in my career to have success so quickly was I do think of myself as very resourceful. So people would ask me questions and I would have no idea. I would be like, yes, absolutely. And I'll figure it out. And then I went back and I did whatever I could to figure it out. But I never allowed my current limitations and knowledge to stop me from saying, yes, I'll figure it out for you. So I love that. Like, believe in your offer, believe in your resourcefulness if you don't necessarily believe in your offer. That's so good. So good.
Awesome.
Love it. All right. Well, Hailey, let us know, where can people find you? So I know you have a freebie that you wanted to share with the audience. So if you want to maybe talk a little bit about that, and then if you want to share how people can get in touch with you and kind of anything that you think would be helpful for them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again for having me. And for everybody here who, maybe you want to get some ideas to make your next sales, or you want to boost your sales confidence, I have some prompts for you that will get you thinking about some solutions and being in that resourceful mode. And it is my free superhero sales journal. So that is available at haileyrowe.com/sales-journal. And I believe it's 50 prompts. So you can pick one prompt a day and get yourself going. And then I have a free community for service providers called the Marketing Hub on Facebook, where you're welcome to network, get business growth tips. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe, HAILEY_ROWE. And I have a podcast called Health Coach Nation, which you're going to be on, I believe. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And all of this will be linked in the show notes. So if anybody listening to this is like, wait a minute, what was the spelling? Whatever, it will all be in the show notes. So just click the show notes and then you can connect with Hailey. Hailey, thank you again for coming on. You are a wealth of knowledge. I hope I learned a whole bunch. I took a ton of notes. Like, I can't wait to go through these. So thank you for being here. I so appreciate you. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.